This is the video for Chapter 16, Section 6, The Pioneer Women. Before getting into the material, first we need to go over the scale. Read over each place on the scale and assess where you are before and after you complete the section. Now, let's look at a score of 3, or the learning goal. I understand the hardships the pioneer women faced and how their accomplishments benefited all women's rights. If you feel you understand this, then you've achieved the learning goal and you can mark yourself as a 3. Now let's go over the few things you need to keep in mind before going into the content of the section. First, the lesson essential question. Remember, what are the motives, the hardships, and the legacies of the pioneer women in this case that moved west in the 1800s? And the section essential questions. 1. What did pioneer women achieve well before the women in the East? And in this case, talking about the eastern part of the United States, where most of the people lived. And 2, what did Biddy Mason achieve in the West? I'm going to show you a short clip that goes into good detail about the hardships the pioneer women faced. This clip was found on YouTube, but it seems to cover a lot of the content you need to know.
Of Western migration in the United States, many women did not travel west. Some lived alone on ranches or mining towns, but in comparison to women there were many more men. These trips were mainly covered by wagon and full of encounters with Native Americans, storms, starvation, and disease. The women that made it to the plains had a large role in building Western societies. Wagon itself was a very important part of the move west. Within one wagon was a bedroom, and the bottom had little compartments where people could store items such as food. Even though the wagon seemed sufficient, life while moving to the west was anything but perfect.
This bacon is awful and mixed with other mushy foods, but no vegetables. I dream of milk and butter.
Those traveling to the plains ate very little and not very appetizing meals. Staples that were many used to such as milk and butter were not available.
Baby, this is the 3rd child I have lost to cholera in 5 days. This deadly disease is killing my family. Lord, please help my baby be with you in heaven and watch over the rest of my family here on earth. We are your servants and wish to please you. Please help us make it to the plains.
Cholera was a deadly disease that killed many. It starts off in the small intestines. The symptoms are dry mouth, glassy or sunken eyes, lack of tears, vomiting, and severe diarrhea. Studies revealed that the infection was spread by the water. Many people thought God was punishing people for not following his way of living, and that is why the disease started.
Snake! Phew! Thank the Lord that my husband shot that snake. I don't like those creatures crawling around.
Another additional danger of moving west was the wildlife. Snakes were common to encounter and dangerous as well.
Thanks for having the party. We danced when we saw the sun.
As sometimes people with a big enough room held parties in the countryside. People would drive from miles away to have fun at a party. The women there danced all night long and did not stop until they saw the sun.
It's just like a rodeo and circus combined. You sure love when you get to watch the horses.
Pioneer children enjoyed seeing numerous animals all the time. There were rodeos and circuses combined, and there were always some animals to watch, such as men riding bucking horses and calves and colts being branded. All forms of entertainment for the children.
Phew, plowing all this corn makes me really tired, especially being a pregnant woman. But since I'm all alone, I have to do all of the men's work. Hey, meet Sarah.
Oh, you'll be having a lot of work to do, especially with this baby. My husband and I are here to help you.
Thank you.
Pioneer women did not have the easiest lives, especially if they were on their own. However, these women were extremely tough and persevered through rough times, such as encounters with Native Americans, bad food, death, snakes, and the dangers.
Alright, now let's go look in your notebooks. Under the Section 6, the notebook questions. Number 1. Many women moved west with their families. Why did single women, pioneers, move to the west? Now there are many different reasons why single women pioneers would move west, but the main ones would be homesteads, which would mean land. They're moving west to get their own land, to start their own life, maybe start a farm. Husbands, some of them would go west looking for husbands that are moving west at the same time, maybe one that finds gold, and other new opportunities. There's all these new towns, cities, posts, everything's setting up along the way, moving all the way out west. So they're going out there for new opportunities, maybe start a new career. You never know what's going to happen when you move west. Question 2. List 3 hardships that women faced along the trail. Now, from that video, you saw many different hardships that you can list, ranging from the wildlife that was attacking them, to the chores and the many different things they had to do. But some more specific possibilities would be women faced having to leave possessions behind on the trail. They didn't have much room. You never know what kind of accidents are going to happen. Drowning, buffalo stampedes, prairie fires, the temperature. You never know if it's going to be really hot, really cold. These are all possibilities you can put. Remember, you need to list at least 3. Okay, for question 3, I'm going to go into detail about how each one of these 3 women were an example of a great legacy for all pioneer women. Biddy Mason. Biddy Mason was a slave who sued for freedom and won. See, originally she was a slave in Texas, but they moved to California, and California was not a slave state. So once they moved to California, she sued her master when she lived in Texas, and she won her freedom. Annie Bidwell, she settled in Chico, California, where she taught sewing to Indian women and was an English teacher that helped with their children. Her actions helped establish the city's first church. And out in the Wyoming Territory, this was the first U.S. territory that allowed all women the right to vote. This was way before women could vote back in the eastern part of the United States. Women were voting in the Wyoming Territory. So let's go back and look at those section essential questions. Number 1. What did pioneer women achieve well before women in the East? We just covered that, and remember the answer is the right to vote. Pioneer women were voting way before the rest of the United States. Question 2. What did Biddy Mason achieve in the West? Remember, she legally won her freedom from slavery. Make sure you copy down both questions and the answers into your packet in order to receive full credit. So, before you completed Section 6, you need to make sure you marked your scale before and after. You completed all the notebook questions, and you've copied down the correct questions and answers for these section essential questions. There's no vocabulary for this section. Once you've completed that, you've finished Section 6 and you're ready to move on to